afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Hingham Municipal Light Board, August 25th, 2026. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is there anybody else on the call who would like to record the call today? I don't see anyone, and everyone on the board is participating remotely. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Mark and Mike from Utility Financial Services. Glad to have you. Where we last left off on this trajectory, we had a couple of requests for Mark and Mike. I don't know if you have been able to follow up and produce some rate tracks with some of the changes that we had talked about at our last meeting. So you can fill us in on where we are.
All right. Yes, we did. We ran several scenarios, which I'll go through. We were able to get from the financial advisor the payment schedule under both a levelized principal payment and a levelized debt service payment. One of the things that Joe had asked for, which was to assume a 0.5% differential between the 20 and 30-year debt, we just use the schedules provided by the financial advisor. And the financial advisor has different interest rates in different years. So I'm assuming that's automatically accounted for in their analysis. Does that make sense? I mean, we can always run different scenarios as we get closer, or at least we can show you what the current numbers look like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oops, what happened? Okay, there we go. Can everybody see my screen? Whoops, I can't see it. Oh, there. As you know, we've gone through several different scenarios in the past, and one of them we ran it was on a levelized debt service payment, but it was it was at the $40,000 bonding amount, which was just assuming that we would stay with that $7 million a year Eversource payment. So that's kind of the baseline that we had earlier. Now, I'm going to jump to this scenario.
Mark, could you please go into presentation mode to make it bigger for everybody?
Oh, I thought I was. I'm sorry.
I think you were, and then it reverted back to.
Oh. Is that better?
Now it's back to.
Now it's going back to
your notes slides.
Huh. My note slides.
Mark, if you right click again, you can hide presenter view.
Oh, I see. Okay. There we go. Can you see it now, Mike?
Yep, you can now. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the lowest cost scenario that we have, and we have the other scenarios run also, but some of the key things is we used $1 million Eversource annual payment. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. Probably somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million, but we don't really know.
You're referring to the maintenance payment?
The maintenance, yeah.
Okay.
This scenario is the $70 million debt, 30-year level debt service. And as I mentioned, this is the lowest cost scenario. And it's 4.5% annual adjustments. And just remember a couple of things. One was we have the depreciation expense as far as the percent going from 5% down to 3%. Now we have 1 year, we're right at the minimum, but we're so close with the 4.5% scenarios. And again, that's a 30-year, and it's with the financial advisor's level debt service payment. So the debt service payment is level, not the principal payment.
Mark, excuse me, who's the financial advisor you're referring to?
Ours, capital market advisors.
Is that capital market?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one is the 20-year, again, level debt service, which is 5.1%. So it goes from 4.5 to 5.1. And again, in that 2030, we have a little bit of a tight year. We have the rate stabilization fund just coming in here because we just want to get added into cash. But if we need it for net income, we can, release that at any point to make sure the net income is appropriate.
Just a question, did you have rate stabilization fund in that spot in the previous slide? And for
Yes.
the 30-year?
Yeah, we ran them all the same.
Okay.
And it wasn't causing us an issue, so we didn't break it apart. Okay, so this next one is where the principal payment is level. All right. So what happens to your debt service payment? It's higher initially and then declines over as the payment, as time goes on. In other words, year 1 is going to be higher than year 5, which would be higher than year 10, because that principal payment is remaining flat and the interest rate is declining. And in this case, the 20-year came up at 6.2% annual adjustment. So we're 5.5, 4.5, 5.1, and 6.2. Now, if we go to the 30-year on this, it drops again down to the 5.1. And this is the level principal payment. So I think the best way to look at this is with the level debt service payment, it was 4.5. With the level principal payment on 30 years, it's 5.1. And then with the level debt service payment 20 years, it's 5.1. And with the level principal payment for 20 years, it's 6.2.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Can you email those to us?
Absolutely.
So we have them. That would be extremely helpful. So any questions for Mark or Mike from UFS, from the board or the staff?
Are we getting those emails now so I can actually look at them and then come up with some questions?
I think Tom emailed the document earlier.
Yeah, I did.
Do we have these already?
You should have them.
Laura, I think maybe when I sent them to Laurie, and then I don't know if I actually forwarded the. Let me just look.
You did get. I did.
Yeah, I see it now.
Received an email. Yeah.
Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions for utility financial solutions from members of the public at this moment? Okay, not seeing any. So we have a lot of variables still to consider.
Yeah.
And it's late in the game for us to be moving forward at this point with, we have more, 30-year, 20-year, as Joe points out, when you extend a loan to 30-year for the same amount, it's going to cost you more in the long run than if you did it in 20 years. But the cost, the annual payment cost is higher. So that those are things we have to balance one against each other. And at this point, I think it's appropriate to put on the floor the question of the advisory committee would like us to give them an answer now on what is the size of the bond that we would like to ask. And then after that, we have to consider I think that we had a consensus last week. Correct me if I'm wrong, that we would like to go to the legislature and secure the option to bond for 30 years. We don't have to actually do it if we decide not to. But if we had that option, then we would carry on to the next discussion, which is 20 years or 30 years, which is advantageous and for which purpose. So where we stand with the advisory committee is they have an article in the $70 million range. We would tonight, if we choose for them an article to ask for a home rule petition to allow us to bond for 30 years instead of 20 years, we have the option to do that tonight. The piece that we don't have is the one that Mark pointed out, which is the amount, not just the amount of the payment for maintenance for Eversource, but actually what they will charge us for the tap station if we pay it all up front, and then we are going to be using our bond to pay for that. We don't know what that number is. And they kindly said they need to have some more conversations on Monday. They will have an answer for us on Thursday. At this moment, I'm feeling like there's a lot up in the air. Time is running short. When we were hoping to receive our rate study, we were hoping to be able to carry right on ahead to make recommendations to the advisory committee. And we've had many weeks of necessary conversation. It looks like there's more to come. So what I want to put on the floor is the question of whether we actually would like to go ahead to town meeting in the fall to bond this, or whether we should have our discussions, have our ducks in order, and bring it back in the spring. Any thoughts from my colleagues on that proposal?
Well, I guess my first thought is will HMLP be disadvantaged financially by putting off a vote this fall until the next annual town meeting? In other words, contract rates going up or something lined up that we'll miss. I just want to understand if there is a downside. I've spoken to Tom, and I don't believe there is, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that.
I don't think we'll know where prices are, right? We up, down, where they're going to be. Since COVID, prices went up during COVID, and they've never really come back down, to be honest with you. So whether they remain level or not, is anyone's guess. I don't see them personally. I don't think it's going to increase significantly or materially from now till the spring, but I don't know what bond rates will be either.
Right. But Tom, so we're not going to go out to bid until we've gotten this, the state siting board, they're concluded. Am I right on that?
we cannot go out to bonding until we have approval from the siting board. So we could not go out and buy anything until we have that approval.
Right. And then even if the town does not vote this fall, would that preclude us from going out to bid?
We could, I guess we could go out to, I don't know if we would want to go to bid where we don't have the full funding. It would be a risk for HMLP.
Wait, what's your question, Joe? Could you say that again?
Is our ability to go out to bid dependent on at town meeting approval of the project?
Yes, because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not allowed to issue revenue bonds of our own. Our only method for getting bonding is to ask the town to issue general obligation bonds.
Right, but the question is whether or not that bonding decision needs to be made before or after we go out to bid.
Oh, you're talking about bidding on equipment.
Correct, bidding to get the work done. Yeah, not
I thought
the
you were
bond.
talking about the. I'm sorry.
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. So that would be that. Yeah, that would be a risk. I'll remind ourselves that we do not need even bond anticipation notes to begin the first year of the project because we're going to be using depreciation funds.
Right.
So the fact that we would have to wait a year, until the next February, that particular thing doesn't slow us up. Just the slowing up would be waiting until spring to have the approval.
Yeah, in the agreement we have with Eversource, it indicates that they will not start until we have bonding and until the project has been bonded.
Like
Okay.
that bond
So
anticipation notes count for that, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So what that suggests to me
they
is
wouldn't
that
start
piece
their
of the
piece.
project might come in later than the rest of it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a delay. I don't know if that's a cost, but that's a delay.
And then the other risk is, if we do go ahead and order equipment, obviously we have to put money up front. And then if the project didn't get bonded, we would be out on those dollars.
Right.
Okay.
I will chip in here because I think what I'm hearing is a very slippery slope. I think we have gone as far as we can with the siting board. We've done all of our due diligence. We've spent a lot of money dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and we expect a decision from them very soon. As far as the rate study is concerned, we've spent a lot of time, a lot of due diligence putting that together. I think we need to clarify with Eversource what they're going to charge us to pay up front for the connection to their grid. They have been responsible in telling us that they're going to look at that. We know budgetary wise, it won't be any more than 45 million. We expect it to be less. How much less, we don't know, but we have a budget sum. We have gone to bond council. We understand the bond market, the implications to the rate payers of the difference between a 20 and a 30-year duration. I think we've done our due diligence. We've acted professionally in bringing the project thus far. For me, I feel quite strongly that the need to borrow is through a bond, and the amount of money that we need to borrow is X. Maybe X minus a little bit, maybe X plus a little bit, but it's still X within the ballpark. And I'm very skeptical, given our current financial and political places that we are, both in the town of Hingham and also in the country of the US, and in where we are in the world with current bond markets and the current need for electricity reliability and resilience. And I believe strongly that it is in the best interests of all our Hingham folks to move this project as efficiently and as quickly as we can down to the finish line. So I'm reluctant to break up the amount of bonding and the how to bond it and the costs into two separate warrant articles or at two separate town meetings. Doesn't make sense to me. And that's both my professional and my gut feeling right now because of where we're at currently.
So, Mike, I agree with everything that you said about the work that we've done and how far we've come down this road. And so what I feel is lacking in terms of getting us to the finish line on this is when we come before the advisory committee, they're going to want to know, okay, what are these rate increases going to be? And we still have not, we have not chosen one of these rate tracks. We just got them. I didn't have an opportunity to really sit and think about them. Not prepared to make a decision on that today. I need to think about it.
Yeah.
And I feel that our time has run out. If time had not run out, I would agree with you. But I think we're on a very short runway here. And that's the part that I feel is missing is everything that you said is true about all the preparations that we've made.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to tell the advisory committee and the select board what the impact is on the ratepayers in order to get to, even square one on this.
So are we going to be closer to that if we delay for a week and adjourn tonight and come back in a week's time? Or are we able to say, here's our model, this is what we project the implication to the ratepayer would be if X is actually X, but bear in mind it might be X plus a factor or X minus a factor. What does AdCom really need to see to buy into what we're proposing on the timeline that we're proposing it?
Well, let's ask Michael, who is here representing the advisory committee today. If you're ready to jump in, Michael, I don't want to put you on the spot, but a question was asked. If you could just identify yourself with your name and address and answer that important question.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Michael.
But he's on the spot. Yeah, you can't. Brianna, can you allow Mike to unmute?
Oh, he should. He's a co-host, so he should be able.
Okay.
Doesn't look like he's able to.
Oh, sorry. Let me
Wrong, Michael. Brianna.
try now.
Hey.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Mike, could you just give your name and address for the
Michael Hurdy, 1 Steamboat Lane, member of the advisory committee, and thank you for the opportunity. I think the committee's going to want to know what is the proposed rate increase that is going to, so the cost. They're looking at the cost. I mean, from the material that was just provided, I think it's at least clear 4.5%. If I read the material, if I understood the materials correctly, 4.5% per year for 5 years, up to possibly 6.2% per year for 5 years, depending on a variety of variables.
20 or 30 years.
Yeah, I think that is certainly quantifiable information.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for the whole committee. I can only speak for myself. That's an understandable. You can do math off of those numbers. And I guess the other thing, which I think has been previously addressed, but I know the other thing that has been discussed within the advisory committee is these rate increases are only necessary if we're going to fund the project. Absent the rate study did not conclude that a rate increase would be necessary if the project did not go forward. I think that was something that was other thing that was discussed.
So, Mark, that's what we understand, right?
That is correct. If we don't do the project, we don't need rate increases. So all these adjustments are for that.
So your thought, let me see if I can say that back to you, Michael, and make sure I understood. Your thought is that if we went to the advisory committee and said, we think the rate increases will be between X and Y, that's depending on factors that we haven't decided on yet, that's adequate for the advisory committee to move forward?
I can't speak for the whole committee. All I can say is that is certainly, you have a minimum parameter, right? The minimum is under what you now know is 4.5% for 5 years. And the maximum of what you know now is 6.2% for 5 years.
That one is not on the table, really.
Okay. So I guess
it'll be 4 point something, 5 point something. It'll be somewhere in that range.
Right. That is certainly the world is filled with doubts, but that is certainly
I know I am.
that certainly provides parameters that the members of the committee should be able to understand and evaluate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a threshold question for AdCom as to whether or not this project should even move forward, whether or not it's needed?
I believe from the previous meeting that we just had, there was discussion about the necessity of the project. There was at least some discussion about whether or not the project should move forward. If that answers your question.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the whole committee.
Well, I understand. And not just AdCom, Select Board may also have similar questions. Are we prepared? Because Select Board will take this up at 6 o'clock this evening. Are we prepared to demonstrate that the project is needed? I'd hate to have a discussion where that is not resolved in a positive manner. So,
I wonder, because I feel like that is one case that we have made repeatedly over the course of the last year. So I don't know what could be added to that. Do you know what I mean?
So, I mean, let's just have that discussion. We've not had the power failures here in Hingham. We have, great, resilience so far. What is the probability? What is the likelihood that we'll actually need this additional line? Are we protecting against a 1% chance, a 0.01% chance? We understand, but that if it happens, it's not good. But what's the likelihood of it happening? The question that I've heard asked is this a very expensive insurance policy? And when you're looking at the risks for insurance, you're asked, well, what's the likelihood? You
asked two things. You ask what's the likelihood and what's the potential damage.
No, I'm not asking the potential damage. I'm not asking that question because we know.
Okay.
I'm asking the likelihood question.
So tornadoes in Long Island and recently, there are macro bursts and micro bursts. Everything's above ground. Take your pick.
Do you feel like that's something that we could put a percentage on, the likelihood?
So when we did the needs analysis for the siting board, I think that question came up, and we did not do a probabilistic approach to this, because all it takes is one storm or one train derailment or one to take out both of those lines. And it could be that the fact that one of them is out and something happens to the other one and we go flat. For how long? Again, it depends on the damage. But we didn't look to see what the likelihood or the percentage or the odds were of that happening.
Just so we're clear, I believe that absolutely we should go forward. I don't think it's a question.
Yeah.
But the question is being asked by others, and I don't want to go in without having a slam dunk response.
Yeah.
And listening to what I've just heard, I've not heard that slam dunk response.
Yeah.
Is
So
there a way of developing such a?
right, I think we need it. I think one arrow that we'll be able to shoot is when the siting board makes its decision. Part of its decision is a professional assessment as to whether or not there's the need. And I think that will be very powerful because I'd be shocked if anyone on AdCom or the select board would think that they have greater expertise than the siting board on this question. But right now we don't have an answer. So I just want to, we go into the meeting.
Of course, we will have an answer shortly. If the answer is yes, we'll have the answer you're looking for.
Right.
The answer is no, the project is obviously not going forward under any circumstances. So that answer is definitively coming. If you think that that is enough to give you an answer to that question,
but when is the answer coming? Is it coming before or after town meeting?
Yes, it's coming in September.
The end of September.
It's before, and we haven't had any indication from the siting board that it wouldn't be an affirmative answer.
Okay.
And if it's not, then we won't be having this discussion anymore.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I think we need to successfully cross that threshold with the select board and with AdCom, or else any other discussion really is not going to matter. And then in terms of the financing, we're requesting up to 70 million, which doesn't mean we'd have to use the full amount.
Correct.
But we also need to ground that number with some level of certainty. You're right, Michael, it can be plus or minus, but it can't be plus or minus 50. It needs to be, a reasonable number. And I've not heard what that plus or minus is. So when do you think we'll be able to have that information?
So the last piece of that is
the Eversource
the Eversource number, which they have said they should be able to give us on August 28th.
Okay.
And so the question we're answering is, does that number plus the rest of the project fit within the $70 million proposal? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, let me ask it differently. How did we come up with the $70 million?
So the project is approximately $100 million.
Okay.
So we have 30 million in depreciation fund at HMLP that we can spend. So we need another 70 million to pay for the entire project. When we first started this, right, we were looking at, okay, we're going to pay Eversource over 40 years, but if we're going to pay them up front, so if we're paying them over 40 years, then we only need another, 40,000 just to be safe. We probably won't borrow
another
that
40
much.
million. 40 million.
40 million. If we're going to pay Eversource up front, then we need 70 million.
We think until we hear from them
Until we hear what that number is from Eversource.
Which
okay.
We find out on Thursday.
But we know Eversource is building and financing into that. So if we don't do the financing, it should be less than the numbers that they've told us already.
Right.
That was my theory, but I thought Joe was very smart to say we need to nail it down. We can't make an assumption.
But let me start with, so Tom, you began with the top number, which was how much? 100?
The project is approximately $100 million.
So are we firm on that amount?
That amount is what the current estimate is. Right now it's at 90, I think it was 97.5 or something, 97,500,000.
Okay, and that includes an Eversource amount.
That includes the Eversource amount, correct?
And does that include basically what we pay each year multiplied by the number of years conceptually, or is that?
That was based on an estimate of 44.5 million, and we were provided a payment schedule, an annual payment schedule over 38 years.
Yep. And so did you sum the 38 payments to add up to your total?
We did not, but
well, Well, I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand. So these are the questions that will come from the select board. I just want to
Yeah,
ask them now.
these are the numbers that Mike Johnson used for in the rate study based on paying Eversource over the 40 years.
But my recollection is that that included the payment, the maintenance payment, which
That would include that maintenance
so we
payment.
have to pull that out and put that into the models, which Mike and Mark have done
Yes.
separately.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the maintenance is arguably not part of the capital expense. That's an operating expense. So what is the capital expense associated with the project? We need to communicate that to the select board.
That's what we hope to know on August 28th, but we cannot tell them tonight.
But we can tell them what the X is, plus or minus. And with a high degree of certainty, we don't expect it to be a plus.
What is the plus? What would we say, Mike?
We would say it would be the 70 million or the 100 million minus the 44.5 million.
But I don't even understand how the 100 million was calculated. That's what I'm asking.
Well, that was the budget for the whole project, right, Tom?
Correct. Yep.
Budget for the whole project, assuming that the Eversource payment was made in the previous financing method as a yearly payment over 40 years.
Right.
So is that an aggregate amount? You basically cumulative over 40 years what we would pay. That's my ask, or was it basically what we'd have to pay up front in terms of a bond amount? I'm trying to understand what that amount is.
So as I understand, it's the 100 million minus the 30 million in the depreciation fund, minus the 44.5 million for the tap station, and the balance is the capital cost. And we're debating how to mortgage that with a bond over 30 or 20 years. I mean, I think our costs are relatively real, fixed. We know what they are. There's going to be a variability because we expect to get something back from Eversource when they do their sums again and realize that they have to charge us for tangible assets that they can demonstrate to the siting board and the review committee that that's what it's costing for the tap station. And then the maintenance becomes part of our operating cost of the local grid.
So let me ask it differently.
Okay.
Where's our spreadsheet or our list that we can present to the select board saying, here's how we calculated the cost?
We should be able to put that together, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to put it together. It's in Tom will have it in our consultants. This estimate was developed by our consultants. So
do we have that here? To put it differently, is that something we're going to present to the select board in an hour and a half? Because we're asking them to vote. They're voting this afternoon. So either
they're voting to put it on the warrant. They are not voting on the project. I don't think.
No, they're not voting on the project. But I would assume the assessment they're making is this a warrant they want to back? So they'll be. I can't speak for the select board right now, but I would think that they would want to know how we came up with this and what's the basis for our calculation. So, I mean, we've been doing this for I don't know how long. Where is the sheet that shows us how we came up with that calculation?
I'm assuming.
I understand conceptually, Michael, what you just did, but I've not seen the sheet.
No, that's right. That's a fair ask.
Right.
Yeah,
and to put it differently, if you're talking about $1 million payment over 40 years for maintenance, if that is included, that's $40 million. Is that included in this?
Again, we don't know what that payment is going to be, that lump sum payment would be to Eversource. There will be some number.
I'm sorry, I'm not asking for the lump sum. I'm just asking, how do we calculate our 100 million?
Yeah.
What was that analysis?
Again, that analysis is basically the estimate. Let me see if I can find that estimate. Hold on a second.
While you're doing that, could I put our representative from the select board on the
Julie,
yes. Could I call on our representative from the select board because I would just like to ask the question that we asked Michael. What does the select board need tonight to put this article on the warrant? You there?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. Could you just get name and address, please?
Julie Straley, 231 Levitt Street, member of the select board. I've been following this issue for a while, and I am very much in favor of this project in general. What I'm hearing is sort of late breaking questions and conversations about getting the numbers right, all really important. But what I also think about is the timeline, not only for the advisory committee to do its due diligence and write a comment. Granted, they've written a comment before, but we've got different calculations this time. And what I'm concerned about is the campaign, so to speak, to talk to the voters and get them to understand the necessity to do this project and to do it, to ask for the vote at a special town meeting. I'm just wrestling with that.
So Julie, that's not a financing question. That is the primary question that I asked before is, do we need this? And do we need it now? And
yeah.
What I'm hearing is you think we need a campaign to communicate to the voters that the answer is yes and yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Before I just want to go to the second question about financing. Do you think the select board needs hard numbers or reasonably hard numbers as to the costs in order for them to advance the warrant article to the next stage?
I mean, I would like that. Yes. And when you're asking questions about whether in part of the calculate, what was the calculation to get to $100 million? That makes me nervous that you're asking that question right now.
I can share the estimate, which will be up. This will be updated, but let me share what I have right now. This is from May, and we should be due a new update within the next month. Share. So this is our current estimate for the.
Can you zoom in a little, please, Tom?
Is that any better or?
Much better.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, so the tap station, 44.5 million. That's the estimate from Eversource.
And just to comment, that is the plus or minus part that we're talking about, or I'm talking about in terms of X.
Or to put it, well, I don't know how that 44.5 was calculated. Was it if we pay Eversource now, or is it the sum of what we would pay over 40 years?
I believe that 44.5 is the present value. And what we would pay over 40 years, it would be more than that.
So if that's the present value, then there would be no discount in our calculation if we paid them up front. This assumes an upfront payment then.
Well, again, that 44.5 would include whatever their annual maintenance is.
For how many years? For 40 years? Yeah.
I'm assuming that would be in there. Yeah.
So that's if on forget the present value. That's $40 million of cat. You could cut it in half to 20 million or less. So that means that the capital cost is really 24.5 and the other 20 mil. I'm cutting the 40 in half.
Yeah.
Is maintenance. Is that what I'm hearing?
Again, it could be, but until we get a number from Eversource, we don't know what it's going to be.
But I think you just said we have the number. This is the present value. The number we were asking Eversource.
What were they asked to bid on?
This is the 44.5 million is
Yeah.
to build a tap station on the right of way in Weymouth. And
so it doesn't if it's just the cost to build the structure, it doesn't include the maintenance cost moving forward.
Again, they gave us
that structure.
Again, they gave us a number, and I'm assuming that maintenance cost is embedded in that number, that 44.5.
That's good news.
Also, and but we're going to have to pay that regardless. So that goes elsewhere that goes right into Mark and Mike's
that's
model.
Operating.
Yeah. But also there's the financing. The financing cost, I'm hearing you say it's not included in this number, the cost of the financing.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you don't have the answer, Tom.
I don't have the answer for you yet.
So one way or another, this will be resolved when we receive their statement about what an upfront cost would be. We will understand that better. I'm wondering, Joe, if you're feeling like we need to dive more back into this estimate with our consultants who developed the estimate.
Yeah, I mean, and since I'm the late entry into this game, so you and Michael have, far more experience dealing with this project than me. But from what I'm seeing, I'm asking questions and I'm not sure I understand the answers. And the question I had for Julie is, do we need those answers now when we go to the select board, or is it enough to do number one, a demonstration that we need the project, and number two, that given these numbers, our request for the warrant article is reasonable, subject to further due diligence by ICOM, because they've got a month basically to do their due diligence. So can we move forward with what we have now, or in Julie's opinion, I know she doesn't speak for the full select board, but at least from her view, would she need more information simply in order to vote this evening?
Can I respond to Julie's question about
Please.
educating the public? I think we've done a very good job of that. I think we've spent a lot of money. There have been lots of open meetings for public comment, and there has been lots of information, including a website for information and numerous mailings, direct mailings to the public. So if said public is interested in learning more, I think said public has had ample opportunity to do that learning.
So I completely agree with you about what the project is and what the need is. A year ago, we were struggling to get people to even know this was coming down the pike. Now I can't go anywhere without people saying, hey, can you tell, want to chat about it. I know it's out there. The existence of the project has been socialized. And so when we talk about education going forward, we're not starting from zero. We're starting from, I think, a good job educating people about what the project is. but confusion was introduced last spring. Some of the items that you mentioned, Mike, that went into people's homes with descriptions of the financial impact were wrong. So we're starting off a little behind the eight ball in terms of financial impact. So we really do need to know that we have time and ability to communicate that piece of it accurately. Because when you get down to it, I think people understand the project and they're like, yeah, that's a good idea, but how much is it going to cost? That's really what they're going to want to know. And so that's what we're struggling with right now. So, I mean, I agree with you as far as all the work we've done telling people what the project is, but we do not have the answers yet on the financial side. That's what's worrying me.
But we're very close to having those numbers, though.
So
yeah, Joe, I'm sorry, I jumped in here, but you asked Julie a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What was the question again, Joe?
That was so long ago at this point.
My brain got sidetracked by Michael's comments. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the education piece is important, and I think I know that that a lot is going on to communicate to the public. The fact that several ICOM members are of the belief that it's still an open question suggests that our communication and education needs to go further, because they've been actively engaged and they've looked at it and they're saying, well, show me. And despite what's happened, they're still saying, show me. But what I was asking is, I guess, given where we're at and where we don't have precise numbers for the costs or for the rates at this point, is it sufficient for the select board to say, hey, this is enough to at least advance the warrant article to the next stage? Because it has to come back from AdCom to the select board again. But at this stage, would you be comfortable or uncomfortable, just yourself, advancing the warrant article?
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I'm feeling less comfortable right now than I have in the past about submitting this warrant article, only because, right, you know, over the last 4 months, a lot has changed since the last time this was a proposed article at annual town meeting. And numbers have changed, and strategy about borrowing from Eversource has changed, and there's been a lot of changes. And what I think about again is the ironclad case for why do we need to do this now? Why do we need to do this at a special town meeting? I feel more comfortable with the idea of numbers coming to a place where they've settled and they're not changing. They're not changing for a while. That you have time for this to sit. And Michael, I get your point. Like, why do we have to keep putting this off? Well, I'm just saying, does it have to be done at a special town meeting now? I can't speak for Bill and Liz. I don't know. I have to leave for town hall in 5 minutes.
Yep.
I get myself over there and get into a meeting, and I guess that's all I have to say.
Julie, what could we tell you that would reassure you that it makes sense to move forward?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be in a position where I'm voting against the light board and what your wishes are, because you have worked so hard on this project. And I do back the idea of this project, but what would I hear? I wouldn't want to know, oh, we'll tell you in 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I just, the final set of information. I mean, yes, this is just opening the warrant and putting it in, but I'm just saying the timeline is really tight. And why put this project under so much pressure with a tight timeline like this?
Thank you.
Because of the downside risk, in my opinion.
Which is,
I just see lots of unknowns in the future that could adversely affect the project.
Which all of us can think about right now. And so that doesn't mean that you're going to be successful this fall getting it through when people are already worried about the future. What?
I have to say that as of this moment, I very glad to have what Mark and Mike have brought to us this evening from Utility Financial Services. But I had the same. I think I have the same feeling that Julie does, that we're not on solid footing in terms of being able to give answers that need to be given on. It might be my leftover advisory committee and select board spidey sense that says the time is too short. This is not soup. And I know from experience that stuff that is not soup, when you begin to try to go through the advisory committee process, doesn't do well. And I think those are the alarms that are going off for me right now, because we need to look at what Mark and Mike have given us. It sounds like we would like to also talk to the consultants and understand better where their numbers come from, although that may be resolved when we hear from Eversource what the others course will cost. That's going to be a little more straightforward in terms of, we pay up front for the capital and we're going to pay maintenance. That will be much more straightforward than whatever it is that is represented by that $44 million, which we're not sure what that is. But at least we'll have that answer. So that may become moot. But I'm not at a point where I can look at those rate tracks and point at one and say, that's the one we want to go with. And I really want to have that before we go to another town board. It's just, I thank you, Michael, for saying, a range would be good and so forth. I don't want to put the advisory committee in that position of saying, well, actually 4.3 is okay with me, but 5.2, I don't know. It's, I would like to say this is the best course, and then have the advisory committee vote that.
Mike, before you before we lose Julie, if we do not go forward with this warrant article, we do want to go forward with extending the 20-year to 30-year bond issuance at town meeting and then with the legislature. Would you be adverse to supporting that warrant article?
I'm totally in support of that article. I think it's a good idea, because then when you come to, hopefully, if it was resolved by the time you come to annual town meeting, then you might be able to tell the voters that it's 30 years and what those numbers are. But in general, just having the ability and flexibility to go to 30 years is a reasonable ask.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, Michael. My perspective there is, I think they're piggyback. They're two warrant articles that should be deliberated on and assayed by the town at the same time, because they're one and the other. We can go to 30 years and this is the cost. I mean, right from the beginning, we knew this was going to be an expensive project. And I think delaying it is only going to cost us more in the end.
Well,
and maybe my proposal tonight would be, let's sit in it, keep asking questions, and come back in a week's time and make a decision then. And if ADNOC has a week less in their timeline to review it, I'm sorry, but that's just where we're at. Let's delay for a week and talk about it, socialize it, get our heads around it. But that's my perspective.
Absolutely no question that, the costs just go up. So, if we wait another X amount of time to get started.
How much have we spent already getting to this conversation?
Well, we have spent a considerable amount, but unless the town chooses to move forward, those are stranded costs.
Yes.
And that's just how it is. So definitely but on the other hand, the question about 20 or 30-year mortgaging, we may not make that bonding. We may not make that decision for another 2 years. because we will continue to follow the costs, how much we're really going to need to borrow. We're going to be back looking, see what the impact, whether the rates are covering what we expect them to. And we may make, we may very likely, I think we would put off that decision until we actually have to go out to bond because conditions may be different. So
But we
it's
want
about
to
having,
cross the T's and dot the I's and make
well,
sure
it's
that
about
you
having the
have
flexibility to do it. And that's a good thing, whether we go forward. We'll have that flexibility sooner if we go forward with that at special town meeting than if we wait. That said, I don't, based on the timeline that Rep. Moschino suggested for this, I don't think we would have that answer by town meeting because she was projecting that it wouldn't get a hearing until June. But I'm going to go back to her and ask if there's any way that we can put it on the fast track. Not that there is any such thing on Beacon Hill, but make an attempt to see if there's a way to get it before town meeting. Maybe there is. I don't know, but we don't know that right now. So we may not know that by town meeting.
I mean, I see the connection between the two warrant articles, Michael, that you're pointing out. But I also see that the 20 versus 30 years is tied directly to one of the points that you've made earlier, which is when you're looking at this type of long-term project, is it fair to have the burden on just, people in 20 years or push it out longer? So that is a separate question that can be addressed by a vote on that warrant article, whether or not we move forward with the other one, because I think the point that you've raised is an important one that we should address. Yeah. So I'd be comfortable moving forward with them independently. I think you're right that it'd be nice if we could move forward together. I'm not comfortable that I'm in a position to respond to inquiries either from the select board or from AdCom on the specifics here. What I thought I heard in prior meetings is that the number from Eversource had baked in a 10%, approximately 10% financing costs. What I think I heard from Tom today is no, it's actually a present value, in which case it's not baked in.
Yeah, so the present value is the 44.5. They baked into this, that 44.5 is a return on investment, which is 10.57 is their return on equity that they get through FERC. We're probably going to pay that anyway because that's the return on equity.
Right. So they've baked that into the present value, which means that if we pay, I'd like to see what their numbers are over time because.
So over time, over the 38 years.
Yeah. What's that sum to?
It's 174 million.
Okay. So those are the two numbers. It's the 40. So it's not as if, let's not pay. Let's only fund the non-Eversource. That was never on the table. So reducing it from 70 to 40 is not something I think we should have communicated to the select board because that was not an option. It was really 40 versus 100, or close to $200 billion if it's paid over time. So,
and just to be clear, what I'm hearing now is Eversource is going to get their return on investment from us, regardless. And now we're talking about also bonding it to pay interest on top of that.
Well, again, they have other things. That's their return on equity. There are other things in that number, so it's probably more than that.
What's more than that?
So when I look at the estimate sheet that they gave us, they have a return on investment of 7.89%. But baked into that return on investment is 10.75 return on equity. So again, I don't know how they separate these numbers or come up with them.
Okay.
And then they have associated income taxes on top of that. So
I love that we're paying them the return on the investment that we're making. This is
that's a FERC. Yeah, that's a FERC thing.
Yeah, that's really burns.
And I know we're paying whatever on top of that, that their
Right. So,
cost of capital is.
so my understanding of what Tom has just said is that they've assumed that the future stream of income there is growing in order to give them that return on equity. And then they did a present value, and it's not clear what interest rate they used for the present value. So that, to put it differently, if their hard costs were $100, then next year, if the return was, if they needed 10%, it would have been 110. So that's not, even though their hard costs, let's say, were the same every year for 40 years, first year would be 100, second year would be 110, the third year would be inflated, and then they do a present value on that inflated number so that we don't have the ability to reduce that number. That is the rate of, I guess, the return on equity that they're entitled to under FERC or whatever regulation they're following. So it would, again, it would not be correct to say that we could avoid paying Eversource upfront, because if we don't pay them upfront, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So I think the 70 million was never off the table.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the most that we would pay Eversource for the tap station? Should we bond it, pay them upfront, and come up with that number for a budgetary purpose for the AdCom?
That's the 44.5 million.
That's the 44. So that is X. It's not going to change. Whatever
that's correct.
Okay. So now we have concrete numbers.
Right. So that's the number. What it's still not clear to me is whether or not maintenance is included in that or not. But let's ignore that as a side issue. So
maintenance is not going to change whether we put.
I understand. Right. So, but if that's number, so then if you could put up on the chart on the screen again, Tom, that calculation.
But what I'm confused about what you just said, Joe, is where's our savings from paying them up front and bonding that cost?
Our savings is not paying the inflated numbers if we didn't do it.
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
So the 44.5 assumes that we paid it up front.
Okay. So, well, that's okay. So that will be very interesting. It seems so. One wonders why Eversource has to think about it. They have to chat. They have to talk with each other about what this number is. Whereas our interpretation of this document is that it's right in front of us.
Or I've not interpreted it correctly.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that. But based on what Tom has said, the 44.5 is the present value. It assumes that we're paying it all up front.
Yeah.
And then, so these are the costs. And so you've got the estimated total of 97.3 million. And we've got call it 100. We've got 30 million. So that's the 70 million that we're looking to bond. And so, Michael, I think you're right. That's the number.
There's the numbers. Share the numbers.
Right.
That's the number until Eversource gives us a number. That's what we think the number appears to be.
Right.
But until they pronounce, we're not really going to have confidence in that number.
Right. I think part of it is at some point, and Laura and Michael, better than me, there was a communication either to AdCom and or the select board that it's not really the 70, it could be something less. It could be 40. And there's
right. But that was more of a whisper in the wind. We shortly concluded that we might be pulling that back. But I do know that
if you want, I can share the estimate I received from Eversource, if that's helpful at all.
Is that what we're looking at on the screen?
Am I already share? It must be, yeah.
And if you could make that a little bigger, I already know what Michael was going to say. Blow it up. You're ringing in my ears at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Investment.
A little bigger.
Okay. Income
Uh,
tax, investment, return tax.
Okay.
So that's over the 38 years.
38 years, correct. So if you go down here, there's some assumptions.
Internal cost of, okay, 45, internal project cost.
Return on investment is inclusive of the current 2.5% return on equity, which reflects the base return on equity approved by FERC.
I think that's been lowered right now to 9 point something.
Well, good for
9
them.
points.
Okay, well, I noticed that Julia's gone so that she can go to her
Her
select
meeting. Yep.
at 6. What I heard from her is that she is reluctant to recommend that we continue this, that we go forward with this
Until she sees
bonding
the
proposal.
numbers.
Sorry?
Until she sees the numbers, and we just clarified what the numbers
I
are.
don't,
I'm not sure.
until we hear from Eversource, I'm not convinced we've clarified these numbers.
I agree with you, Laura. I'm looking at that chart. It's not clear that the interpretation we're giving is the correct one. And
It would be lovely if you could email that to us, Tom, so we can.
Yeah, I will.
yeah,
Is it likely that Eversource will come up with higher numbers? I don't think so.
Well, they're Eversource,
Yeah.
they're good at that.
yeah.
I'd be able to defend those high numbers.
Okay, so I think there's a question about do we have a handle on the numbers? Because we've given them 70, we've given them 40, and now we're saying it's 70, but we need to speak with credibility here. And at this point, at least I haven't seen enough to demonstrate that we have. I also have not heard that there really is a material downside to putting it off from a November meeting till a June meeting, an annual town meeting. Because regardless of what town meeting does, there's a lot that we need to do before we're going out to bid. And I think we can do that regardless of whether or not we've had a town meeting vote.
I think we lose credibility. I think we withheld an article at the last town meeting. We said we would come back in the fall, and
so we will. We will come back in the fall with something that we are hopeful is going to ultimately lower the costs, and I think that's going to help. Speaking for myself, I don't feel that I at this point in the town meeting process, if I were sitting in advisory's chair, I would want a lot more solidity than we have right now. And what we're faced with is the question, shall we withdraw the article that we have proposed that the select board put on the warrant? Because I would prefer to do that than have the select board decline to put it on the warrant.
So when can we provide them with that information?
What information?
The information that you indicated is not available now.
So I'm hopeful that we will be able to sort this out, say, in the next week or two, but I've been feeling that way all along. And so far, the numbers just continue to move around, and I'm not 100% confident now about when we could do that. It looks like we'll have the numbers from Eversource on August 28th, and we can have a meeting and choose from amongst these rate tracks, but I'm not sure they're going to give us a number and then we're going to go, wait a minute, what about, or something like that. That's the thing that could happen. And I know
you're saying that Eversource could hold up our project because of their inability to convey the correct numbers.
Yes,
project that we've had.
Yes.
In their specs and in their planning for years now?
Yeah, because it took them forever to come up with this number in the first place. We waited and waited and waited for them.
I'm not convinced that they have the number, but they need to have a number, and we need to hold them to that number.
Well, yeah. So
I'm not
David and
confident that we'll
Goliath.
have one although they said they would get back to us on the 28th. I'm not confident that we'll have a number on the 28th.
So I'm at a moment where I'm prepared to entertain motions relative to the two warrant articles that are under consideration, unless there's more to say.
So let
Any
me
further-
ask, Laura, so there's two. I think one, in terms of the going from 20 to 30 years, I expect that you're going to get a unanimous vote here. With respect to whether we take a vote on the warrant article, what are the consequences if we don't vote on it? We don't have to vote to withdraw or we don't vote.
So if we leave things as they are, the select board has this article before them.
Yeah.
And they will either vote to put it on the warrant or they won't. And I don't want to put them in that position because I am not confident in my numbers. And I don't want to ask them to take steps when I am not confident in our numbers. So if they will either vote to put it on the warrant or they won't. Whereas if we withdraw it, they will not put it on the warrant. That's the difference between those two things as I see it.
One possibility, I'm not advocating and I'm just raising it, is we do not adjourn our meeting, that we take a recess and we reconvene with the select board. Tonight, their meeting is at 6:00.
Okay.
And we can join, and then we can have the discussion. They'll hear from us, we hear from them, and then if it looks like it's going south, then we vote with Laura, not with you, but we recognize that we do not want them to take an adverse action, and we vote to withdraw. If in fact they hear, Michael, I think you've made some strong points, and they say, yes, we're willing to advance, then we don't have to vote to withdraw. I will tell you that I believe that the select board at this point is not prepared to advance this warrant article. I think they have not heard the argument that this is necessary. And however well or not that it was communicated to the public, they in their hearts know it, but they can't point to something and say, this is really, damn it, you really need it. And they believe that the numbers are moving and that we, just as Laura said, we need further work to pin it down. And I don't even understand the sheet that Tom put, that he shared with us, to say, this is how we got to it. I don't know if what that really means. And maybe, Tom, you do, and you'll be able to explain it to the select board.
We need to be able to answer that question, and as a board, we need to,
yes,
before that, to be affirmative on that sheet.
Yeah. So, Tom,
those are tangible costs that we've paid consultants and engineers a ton of money to develop.
You're right.
I think there's a credibility issue on the light board. And I believe we have a very good reputation, and I'm not going to let that slip away.
Yeah.
So I guess, Tom, are you, because you're the one who'll be on the hot seat at the select board meeting, are you prepared to answer the questions?
Again, we have this number that came from Eversource, nothing to do with Hingham Light. How they came up with it, I have no idea how these numbers are calculated. I've gone through the sheet and looked at it, but I have no idea how they come up with the numbers. I have no idea.
What have our consultants expressed in terms of?
Again, all they've done, Michael,
those numbers. I mean,
they've looked at these and said, this is what Eversource is going to charge you.
Okay, so they've not.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
they should be asking those questions, no?
They may have.
Yeah.
We don't know. We haven't talked with them.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like we're looking for a meeting with our consultants too. That's LIG.
Yeah,
to-
LIG and Charlie Salomon have looked at these numbers, and again, all they can tell us is that Eversource has some calculation that they use for these projects,
And
and these numbers
the
are.
siting board has these numbers.
What's
They
that?
got to make sense to the siting board when they review the budget for this project. I mean,
Right.
that doesn't mean they can tell us exactly what goes into that number.
They're gonna, the siting board will have this estimate, right?
Yeah.
That's provided to the
Yeah.
siting board. And the siting board, again, siting board's been around forever. They're going to determine whether, one, this project is needed,
correct,
and two, whether it's financially, it makes sense.
correct.
So
In the rate
they will
case-
look at,
Based on what Eversource says.
right. They look at all these numbers. And again, in the end, they'll approve the project or they won't approve the project.
And
Okay, so I see two paths before us. There's Joe's suggestion that we recess our meeting until it probably won't. We could recess until 6:15 because we're not first on the agenda, and have a conversation with the select board. However, I personally don't feel that I have the clarity that I need to have on numbers to say to the select board tonight, I would like you to put this on the warrant. That's my problem.
And my opinion, I share your view, Laura, and I would not want to move forward when the chair of HMLP expresses that view. So I would not be comfortable moving forward.
So, Laura, what do we need? What do we need to do, and how do we get there in a short?
Well, we got to get Eversource's numbers in terms of the second financing proposal. Run that through Mark and Mike's model to see what that implies for rating.
That should happen this week, according to what we've been
Should,
told
but
by
as Tom
Eversource.
said, we don't have a good experience with Eversource in terms of them. They have repeatedly said, "Oh, we're going to tell you what this is going to cost." And this is at the bottom of their pile of things to do. This is like the last thing that they want to be spending money on is figuring this out for us, especially since it means they're going to get less money, quite possibly. So, Tom is skeptical that we'll have this number on August 28th. They just said they'd get back to us on August 20th. Who knows whether we will actually have that number. So anyway, I don't know when that's coming. I think we can say firmly we don't know when that's coming. But when it does, we can run all these models again, and then we can evaluate where we are. The select board can open the warrant later, but we can
withdraw the warrant like we did last time, because we set a dangerous precedent. We can withdraw it at the last minute if we're still uncertain.
It would be far less damaging to our credibility never to go forward with it at all, rather than to withdraw it at the last minute. We already did that once, and I'd rather not do that again.
So when is the deadline to move forward with the two warrant articles?
Well, for me, tonight. And I think one of them should.
Board. What about the select board?
I believe it's this evening.
Their plan is tonight they're going to open the warrant, put the articles in it they want to be in the warrant, and close the warrant.
Okay,
Now,
so then we should be part of that discussion tonight.
They can open it again if they want to, but I'm feeling I have a great lack of confidence about having what we need to have in a reasonable time to get this before the public in a way that's understandable. That's my concern, not to mention the advisory committee. So from a confusion generating point of view, it would be better to just simply say we're not ready to move forward than to go and open this conversation up with select board and have it all over again in a public meeting that may cause confusion in the public. That's my point of view.
So I guess the way I would present this is that we think it would be more prudent to present this as a warrant article after there's been a determination by the siting board about both the merits of the project and the cost of the project. And we don't have that determination yet. We're expecting it soon, but pending that, we're not prepared to go forward. I would not couch it as any level of confusion. I would couch it as we need, and as a practical matter, we can't go forward without the siting board. And it would certainly be embarrassing if there was a warrant article and it turned out the siting board did something different. So I think we need to get that handled, get the siting board, study done. And again, we're expecting that timing sometime in September. Is that right?
Yeah, there should be a draft of the approval on I think it's the September 21st that would go out to everyone to review.
Right, and then typically there's at least a 30-day comment period on that.
Well, it would go out the 21st. There would be a public hearing, I believe, on the 28th, and then you're correct. There'd be a 30-day, so there'd be comments made at that meeting, and the final approval wouldn't come until at least 30 days after that.
So we're talking end of October.
We're talking about potentially after town meeting.
Yeah. That's right. And I have looked at what's been submitted, and there have been public comments saying that this project is not needed. So not that I agree with them, but they're on the record. And I expect that those individuals or groups would continue that. So,
well, hopefully the board will address that. If they're, either the board will say, we disagree, this project's needed, and we go forward, or it will say, no, we agree with you. And that's
right. All I'm saying is that during the comment period, we're likely to have comments adverse to this as well as in support. So I think it's prudent that we have that handled before we ask the town to say we now want to fund it. So
yeah, I think that the reason that's a good argument is because we can say the question is this needed? It will be a very powerful statement when the state says it is needed.
Right.
And that's a valuable contribution to the discussion is what the state has to say about it.
Right. But I don't want to confuse that with any indication that we don't think it's needed, because I think this board is unanimous that we do think it's needed, that it needs to move forward. But given the procedural process, we need to get this handled. It's almost like with school funding, if the town is going to fund something, well, we have to make sure, and if MSB is going to be funding it, we get an MSBA determination before the town goes out for bonds on that. So, Laura, I share your view. And I would agree that at this point, the warrant article on borrowing, we should not proceed with.
So if we do elect to go that route, if everything goes smoothly and we get numbers from Eversource and we get affirmative action from the siting board, we missed that opportunity to get 2 articles in front of town this fall, which we said we were always going to do.
Well, actually, we don't. The select board, if we come back and say we feel strongly about this, the select board can reopen the warrant and put it back on. But what I'm saying is, from my experience with the advisory committee process, we will end up pushing it too far. We just won't have the time that we need to work with the advisory committee and the public. That's my opinion. And they're done.
The advisory committee spent a ton of time on this already.
Yeah. And we're still trying to get them what they're asking for.
Yeah, the numbers are changing, but I mean, my confidence in X is very, very good right now. yes, as a board, we need to do our due diligence and go back to Eversource and have them sign off on their numbers again.
Okay, so Mike, I really totally get where you're coming from, and I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my bones. Very hard to consider not moving forward, but I don't have the clarity that I need.
Okay.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to ask the select board to request. I'm going to I want to entertain a motion to withdraw our recommendation that the select board put the borrowing article on the warrants.
So you're not just let me confirm what you're not in favor of is going to their meeting tonight and having a joint discussion like Joe suggested.
I'm not, because I feel like in our current state of confusion, it's just going to put a lot of confusion out in the public space.
Okay.
That will not help us get to an answer, I don't think.
So did you just make that motion, Laura?
I'm the chair. I'm entertaining a motion. Somebody else is going to have to make it.
I so move.
Okay. I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion?
We've had a lot of discussion. Thank you.
Yes.
Good discussion, I may add, which is what it's about.
All in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Laura? Aye. Thank you, Mike, for helping us out. So I will also entertain a motion to approve I entertain a motion that we ask the select board to insert the borrowing, the request for we need the language. Tom, can you put the language up for the request for the home rule petition article? I will entertain a motion that we ask the select board to place this article on the warrant.
Which would extend the borrowing from 20 to 30 years.
Extend the borrowing from 20 to 30.
May I just question why we would put that one on now and not put them both together?
And
the reason I raise that is because I see them being yin and yang, and people like to discuss things at one time and then it follows logical. We made this discussion, we made this opinion, we voted affirmative, and then it affects the next one. What I don't like to see in town meetings is when one article is at the beginning and one is in the middle and one is at the end, and they really should be concurrent. That's my point. I'm not saying we shouldn't make this warrant article and move to have it on the fall warrant, but I'm just questioning whether we would be better to have them both in the spring meeting.
I feel like given that we promised town meeting action at the fall, and we didn't promise town meeting, we promised people action at the fall town meeting, we're going to say, we're going to come forward with this proposal that is potentially going to lower the cost of this project when we do bring it back forward. And I think that's something people will want.
That's fair.
I think it helps.
Let me ask, are we going to be approving rates, assuming that this project moves forward?
Oh, that is a whole other conversation that we cannot have tonight.
Well, the reason I say that is if we're looking at rates that assume a 30-year borrowing, then it would be prudent to move that process along to support that kind of rate structure. So I hate to say
that's going to be I think the next conversation that we're going to have whenever we have it. Okay. It will be at our regular meeting or meeting before then if we feel prudent. But I think that we need to do that.
So again, this gives us ammunition that we do not have to fire in terms of whether or not we're going to go from 20 to 30 years. Right. And I think it demonstrates our commitment that we intend to move this forward and that this is one of the predicate steps to moving it forward. So it's not as if we're saying we don't want to move, we don't want to have this, the warrant article. It's that we withdrew it as a matter of timing, but we're committed to moving forward with it. And this is part and parcel of that, the 20 to 30 years. So
the purpose is to increase affordability of this project.
Right. Right. And so I think it sends a message that that the withdrawal motion doesn't mean that the project not moving forward. It sends the opposite signal that it is moving forward. That's why I would want to do this now. I recognize, Michael, your point that they're together, but the fact that these two are, as you put it, yin and yang, demonstrates that they're both there, even though one part has not yet acted on. So that's the message that I would hope is conveyed by moving to the 20 to 30-year moratorium.
No, I just wanted to have the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Okay, good.
You're
No,
not
thank you for
changing
that.
my mind on how I feel about it. I just think it's important that we have the discussion.
absolutely.
Good. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion that we ask the select board to insert the following article into the warrant for the fall town meeting of 2026. Will the town of Hingham vote to petition the general court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in accordance with article, that's a lot of Roman numerals. Let's see, Article 2.
Laura, if I can interrupt.
Can you help me?
Yes,
I need professional help with this.
all you need to say is you make a motion, or you'd accept the motion to insert the article as presented
Excellent.
here.
As presented here and as will appear in the minutes and as we
Yes, and I so move.
Okay, great. Is there a second for
And
that?
I second.
Okay, all in favor. Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Laura? Aye. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I will be at the select board meeting to try to convey what we have voted on here.
Accomplished.
Great. And I assume Tom is going with you.
I will be there. Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so Mike,
thank you.
I want to thank Mike and Mark especially for being here through this discussion, because there were times when I was tempted to say, "Hey, you guys, I'm sorry you have to do," but who knew we did need you in the middle of it, and I really appreciate your being here through the whole conversation, because it gave me a feeling like if we have a problem, we can ask you. So that was great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Laura,
you so much.
thank you for leading this discussion. This was not an easy one, and I think you did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Laura? Aye. Thank you, everyone.